Our next speaker is Dr. Yelena Krasnoperova, and she will be doing our keynote talk. Yelena is the Vice President of Monetization Analytics at Meta. She has over 25 years of experience in data science, strategy, risk management, and business operations. Yelena enjoys travel, foreign language, and, wait for it, teaches Zumba. That's amazing. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Yelena.
I'm going to break out into Zumba. All right, good morning, everyone. So delighted to see all of you here. I'm going to start my talk with a quote from a guy, which will become rather obvious quickly. A smart man makes a mistake, learns from it, and never makes that mistake again. But a wise man finds a smart man and learns from him how to avoid the mistake altogether. Well, guess what? We're at a Women in Analytics conference, so I rewrote the quote, just a tad. A smart woman makes a mistake, learns from it, and never makes that mistake again. A wise woman finds a smart woman and learns from her how to avoid the mistake altogether. I hope that by the end of this talk, and this day in general, you will all get a little bit wiser because you get to learn from our mistakes, our lessons learned the hard way, the not wise way, from the last, in my case, 25 years as a woman in tech and a woman in analytics. We're going to start our journey just a few miles from here at Stanford University. But time-wise, we have to go back quite a bit in time. As my smarty pants teenage kids remind me, we're talking last millennium. Okay? Last millennium, 98 to be exact, when in September of 98, I graduated with a PhD from psychology, from Stanford with a PhD in psychology. Now, I sometimes casually refer to my degree as being in statistics or data science because this was Stanford after all. Even though we studied humans, so psychology, we wouldn't just ask them to fill out a questionnaire and tell us what they thought or how they felt. We wouldn't just observe them. It was hardcore, very scientifically rigorous, very experimentally focused, program. So that's why I sometimes call it a PhD in statistics. Now, I'll tell you a quick story about how I ended up at Stanford in the first place. I grew up in Russia, as you can guess from my name, came here to the States in 1990, so a little while ago, also last millennium, for what was originally supposed to be a one-year exchange program. And I've been here ever since. Oops. So 1 year, 33 years, who's counting, went to Wellesley for undergrad, an all-women's school, right, on the East Coast. Went once again on an exchange program, and this time I did come back. I went to Germany, studied at the University of Constance for a year, where I picked up a French husband. Came back to Wellesley, finished Wellesley in '94, and went straight to Stanford because I thought at the time I wanted to be an academic. I quickly disabused myself of that notion by the second year at Stanford, because while I loved teaching, a lot more about that later in this talk, research was very literally too academic for my taste. I'm impatient, I'm pragmatic, I want to have an impact right now, this second, and not for somebody maybe 20 years from now to do something with the results of my research. Now, it was my second year, right, at Stanford, and so I could have dropped out or stopped, with a co-terminal master's degree, but I've never stopped anything in my life. So I'm like, I'm going to finish it, but I'll do it as quickly as I physically can. And so I did it in 4 years, from start to finish, which is the bare minimum that they will allow you to graduate with a PhD degree. Well, the cool thing about it is I was done, I had a PhD, but because I was so focused on my studies and on my research and also doing some extra teaching, and also I was on a visa, so I was not allowed to work off campus, all I knew is what I didn't want. I had no idea what I actually wanted to do, right, with my life. And that brings us to lesson number 1. Know what you want. I get asked career advice a lot by men and women alike. And they very quickly ask me, what should I do? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Where are you trying to get to? And oftentimes they actually don't have a very clear answer. Right? I'm like, well, I can't possibly advise you about how to get there if we don't know what there is, right? And only you know what you want. I certainly can't answer it for you. And so back in 98, last millennium, I had that problem, which is I didn't know what I wanted other than didn't want to be in academia. So I spent several days or weeks, don't recall when, because it's been a while, but I essentially wrote a reverse job description, a job description for the job that I wanted. It didn't have the job title. I had no idea what that was. But I had 2 columns, things to avoid, a lot of the things from academia, right? And then things that I wanted, characteristics of the job that I wanted. It had things like impact, challenge, variety, I get easily bored, project-based work, working with people, results, action. It also had a bunch of practical things, like I wanted to stay in the Bay Area. My husband was working as a software engineer, and he's like, oh, I'm staying here. And then I also wanted to make enough money to take care of not only myself and ultimately our 2 kids, but also my parents, who at the time lived in Russia, but I was hoping to bring them over. And when I was done with my reverse job description, I showed it to people. And I was like, tell me a job that fits this description. And they would look at it, and they would say, management consulting. And I was like, what's that? And they would explain to me what that was, strategy consulting. They told me about firms like BCG and Bain and McKinsey and others that would occasionally recruit non-traditional, as in non-MBA candidates like myself, right, to be consultants. And I was like, why? Why would anybody want to hire an ex-communist and an ex-academic to give them business strategy advice? What do I know about that, right? And they said, don't worry, you'll be part of a team, you'll do a mini MBA class, you will learn, it's fine. And I said, okay, fine. So I applied to BCG, through their PhD, recruiting program. I go to the first interview, pass it with flying colors, just an interpersonal chit-chat. And then they tell me at the end, next one is going to be a case interview. I was like, oh, what's that? Case interview. So I went to the Stanford Business School library, and I asked for 2 things. Number 1, I said, I need to prepare for this case interview thing, with a consulting firm. Can I get, practice tapes? And again, remember, last millennium. So they gave me audio and video tapes, the kind that you have to fast forward and rewind, physical kind. And I watched them, right? I practiced, as much as I could. The other thing I asked for was textbooks. Give me all the textbooks that MBA students read in business school core classes. And they gave me a stack of books yay big, and it had finance and marketing and operations and strategy and a bunch of others. And I brought them home and I read them in 2 weeks, like the way you cram for an exam, right? I just read them. And I was like bursting with stuff that I just learned, right, from these books and from the video and audio tapes. And I thought I was ready, well, as ready as I could get in 2 weeks. I come to the interview, and again, it starts with the interpersonal stuff, no problem. And then he's like, okay, now the case interview. And I was so nervous, I kind of sort of passed out. I didn't physically fall off the chair. I remained seated, but my mind went completely blank. So the only thing I recalled, he started with, so the client is. What should the client do? With like nothing in between, nothing. So by some small miracle, I recovered. I asked a few clarification questions to start with. He must have given me credit for like resilience or something. But I survived that interview and other interviews, and I got a job at BCG. Voila. And that launched my career in what turned out to be tech. Because you were supposed to get variety in the consulting firm. I didn't. I worked for Microsoft, 3+ years, 7 projects in a row. We helped them reinvent their business, to what eventually became software as a service. All right? So that was big tech. Then I did medium tech. I worked at eBay and PayPal. Then I did small tech. I worked at startups like Zong and Odesk. One was acquired, one went public. And then I worked at tiny tech, my own companies. I became an entrepreneur. I built companies from scratch. I built apps for parents. I did that for 5 years. And then, of course, now I'm back in big tech at Meta, and I've been here for almost 4 years. So back to the know what you want and go for it. All right, lesson number 2, say yes to new possibilities. Now, arguably, the story I just told you is a good example of saying yes to a possibility that was somewhat random, and I certainly did not feel very, very well prepared for. But I'll tell you an even better story that actually goes further back, because for me, it truly was a life-changing moment. And it happened back in Russia when I was 11 years old. So I told you I grew up in Russia in a big city called Perm in the Ural Mountains that nobody here has heard of, which is fine. It's fine. I went to school the way that schools were set up back then. I have no idea if it's still the case or not. But you physically stayed in the same building for 10 years. You start at the age of 7 in first grade. You finish at the age of 17 after completing 10th grade, right? Not only that, you stayed with the same group of 40 students in the class for 10 years. You better like them because you're stuck with them for 10 years. As will surprise approximately no one who knows me, I was a straight A student, okay? I was a teacher's pet. And I'm sure other students absolutely loved the fact that my hand was permanently glued in this position because I knew answers to every question, right? And never been in trouble in my life at school. I was super compliant, you know. And so here we are, 4th grade, 11 years old. School just started. It's 8:30 in the morning. We sit down for a first period, you know, and there's a knock on the door. And it's our school principal. He's this gruff World War II veteran, and he says, Yelena Krasnoperova, pack your bag, come with me. You're not coming back to class today. I was like, what did I do? What happened? Like, am I in trouble? Oh my God, the class is like, shh. As I'm packing up my bag and following him on shaking, you know, legs out of the classroom. And he just marches down the hallway without saying anything. And I follow him, and he stops in front of the first grade classroom. And he looks at me, and he goes, first grade teacher is sick today. I need you to teach first grade. And walks in. And I follow him, and I see the sea of 47-year-old faces, and I'm 11. And he points me to 2 more things. He points me to a lesson plan for the day, which has math as the first subject and others. And he also points me to a stack of textbooks with bookmarks in them for where I'm supposed to, you know, start that particular lesson. And math is open at the top on page 46, and walks out. I'm going through the options in my head. Like, what are my options? I don't seem to have a lot, because he literally told me I'm not allowed to come back to class that day, right? So I'm like, all right. And I look at the sea of faces, and I have about 30 seconds to say something or do something before I lose the class, right? Like, it will erupt in complete and total chaos. So I take a deep breath, and I say, all right, class, open your textbooks on page 46, math textbooks, and raise your hand if you know what the subject is, because I certainly don't. Right, what the topic is for today. And there you go. And I taught that class, and the next class, and the next class that day. And that was the beginning of my love of teaching, which has become a feature, not a bug, in what I do in my career, whether I'm paid to do it or not. I also, that day, became an unpaid substitute teacher for the rest of my schooling career. All right? It became a running joke. What subject? What grade level? Okay. And you know, I would routinely teach high school courses to kids a year younger than me. All right? So it was like improv comedy all the time. Now, it turned out teaching is a great way to learn. I knew these things cold. I thought I was an A student before. Now I really knew my stuff, right? Because you can't just wing it in high school, you know? So that was that. Now, I know it's an extreme example even by Russian standards, honestly. I don't think this is normal by any stretch of imagination. And you're like, how is that relatable? What I hope is relatable is that there will be opportunities in your life, professionally and personally, that you will encounter, that you feel you didn't ask for it, didn't expect it, didn't plan for it in any way, shape, or form, and you feel woefully unprepared for them. Because to say that I was woefully unprepared is like an understatement of the millennium. All right, millennium. So, but here's how we women typically approach it. Let's say we're looking at a job description for a job that we're considering applying for. You know, it has the description, the responsibilities, and then it has a section on minimum qualification, which is like the hard required qualifications, and has preferred qualifications, right? And as women, we typically like check all the boxes on the minimals. We check all the boxes on the preferred. And then we're like, and I'm going to compile an extra list of imaginary additional characteristics that surely the ideal candidate for this job has or should have, and only apply for this job if I meet all the minimums, all the preferreds, and my additional imaginary list. Does that sound familiar? Yes, yes? Do men get stopped by such minor things as not meeting all of the minimum qualifications? No, they do not. I'm exaggerating slightly for emphasis, but they squint and they're like, I have 80% of that. Good enough. Raise their hand, okay? So, again, exaggerating slightly for emphasis. My point, though, is take a chance on yourself. Not for everything, not, crazily. Maybe don't do exactly what I did, but, at least give yourself a chance to surprise yourself with the kinds of stuff you can pull off, right? Now, do all these risks pay off? Definitely not. As my bank account can attest, from a financial perspective, being an entrepreneur for 5 years, self-funded entrepreneur, was a really bad idea. It was a very sad bank account. Because I was funding my companies with my personal savings. And my long-suffering French husband of 25 plus years was like, honey, I love you very much, but please stop doing that. Right? Do I regret doing it? Absolutely not. I learned a ton. I feel like I have 2 PhDs now. The real one from Stanford and the honorary one from the Entrepreneurial School of Hard Knocks. All right? So, and I have a job I absolutely love, right? And it brought me here, and who knows if I would have been here if it wasn't for my crazy entrepreneurial journey. So, let's go to the next lesson. And it may seem like a direct contradiction to what I just told you. Yelena, didn't you just tell me I'm supposed to say yes to everything? No. I said say yes to, unique opportunities that you think will teach you something or give you new experiences. But it doesn't mean saying yes to everything. You need to know when to say no. And why? As this hourglass reminds us, time is limited. Time in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, in life, right? Not to sound morbid or anything, but we will all die. And so you have a limited amount of time, literally, on this planet. So maybe do something intentional with it, right? Because your calendar will get filled up. It's the only question of with what and by whom, right? And so one of the quotes that I really like, also from a dude, but this time there was no man, him thing going, so I like this. Don't prioritize your schedule, schedule your priorities. Absorb that, right? Read that. So it literally says, because often what we do is we have a calendar and we're like, oh, this is the most important thing, and whatever, and you're on the margin trying to reshuffle some things. He says, start with a blank calendar and start with putting the most important things first. Okay? Now, let's be real here. My kids are now teenagers, almost 18 and 16. When they were small, I'm not going to pretend that I had control over my calendar, all right? I had 2 little guys, who were in control of my calendar, much more so than I was, right? But to the extent that you can be intentional, right? And schedule your priorities, literally, both personally and professionally. Raise your hand if you've heard the name Mary Kondo, the consultant. Oh, yay! Okay, never seen the woman. I literally don't know what she looks like, but I've heard what she allegedly says, which is she takes you to your closet and invites you to open your closet and look at the clothes in it. right? And the question that you're supposed to ask about a given piece of clothing, does this spark joy? Does this piece of clothing give me joy? And if the answer is yes, you're supposed to keep it. And if the answer is no, you're supposed to donate it or sell it or, get rid of it. I try to Marie Kondo my calendar. I look at my calendar and all the things that I'm doing, meetings, appointments, and everything, and I ask, does this meeting give me joy? Now, again, let's be realistic here. Funny, right? Funny. No. So, of course, at work, there's a bunch of things that give you the opposite of joy, okay? Like, seriously, they give you hives, and you have to do it because it's, part of it is part of the job. But again, for the discretionary pieces, think about what gives you joy, right? In a work context, for me, joy translates to impact, influence, right? Ability to drive results, ability to change lives, hopefully for the better. And so that's what I try to prioritize, very literally. All right, next lesson. We're going to talk about superpowers and leaning into them. And before you ask what this lady is doing, I have no idea. But apparently it involves marshmallows and fire. So we're not going to attempt it today, just saying. And no, this does not represent my literal superpower that I'm going to talk about, but I thought it was really cool. But we're going to talk about an example superpower that I think I have. Hopefully I have multiple, but I'm going to talk about things related to communication and persuading, with data. And, it falls into the category of the so-called soft skills. I don't know about you guys. I hate the designation of hard skills and soft skills, because hard skills, the knowledge of facts and statistical techniques and analytical methodologies and all of that sounds durable and real and, and then the soft skills sounds, fluffy and impermanent and, whatever. But I think they're actually more transferable and more durable than the hard skills. When you think about its potential to be replaced with AI can crunch data way better than I can. And AI can know statistical techniques way better than I can. But good luck to an AI that tries to compete with us humans on its ability to entertain, to empathize, to connect, to influence, to lead, right? So that's basically the category. And again, I want to talk specifically about communication skills and the ability to explain very complex things, which is what we do for a living, complex stuff, right? Analytics, but do it in a way that is simple and that connects with the audience. I'm going to give you an illustration of what makes it so hard. Just because it's simple does not make it easy, right? It's hard. And part of what makes it hard is that we know too much. Expertise is a problem. Knowledge is a problem. Now, I'm going to show you an illustration, and I have a favor to ask. Some of you have heard this talk before. Some of you have read this book before that uses this example. So if you've seen it, don't say anything, okay? I want people to experience it for the first time if you've never seen it, all right? And I'm going to show you an image, and I want you to shout out. Don't bother raising hands or anything like that. Just shout out what you see. Deal? But again, if you know the answer, don't say anything. What do you see? Rose. Red. Red rose. I love the combinatorics of the things. Petals. Spiral. Plant. I've even had people say beauty. I'm like, cool, right? Or they would say things like it's a picture of or a photo of a rose, a flower, etc. A dolphin. All right, raise your hand if you can see a dolphin. Okay, and I bet many of you know the answer because, let me point out the dolphin. Now can you see the dolphin? Raise your hand if you can see the dolphin. All right. Hopefully you can all see the dolphin, right? The outline. Now, here is a trick question. We're going to go back to the original picture. And I want you to raise your hand if you now cannot see the dolphin. Okay? Ignore the dolphin. There's no dolphin. Go back to your previous state where you didn't know the dolphin was there. Raise your hand if you can. You can't unsee the dolphin. Once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. Once you know something, you can't unknow it, right? But it gets worse than that. When you as women in analytics are presenting your analytical findings, you haven't just seen the dolphin once. No, no, no. You have a PhD in this dolphin, in this particular species of the dolphin. You know everything about this dolphin. And yet, you're communicating with people who don't even know the dolphin is there. Right? They've never seen it. That's the magic. That's what makes it so hard, right? Is meeting the audience where they are and taking them to inform them about the pertinent facts from your dissertation about the species of a dolphin and how it's relevant to the problem at hand. All right, lesson number 5, cultivate some areas of incompetence. What now, Elena? You want me to do what? Areas of incompetence sounds like something I'm bad at, like a weakness, and you want me to cultivate it on purpose? Yes, I do, as a work-life balance technique. So, quick story. So, remember, straight A student, in part because it didn't occur to me to get a B in every subject, regardless of whether I cared about it or not. My husband, French guy, French school is on a 20-point scale. Highest grade, 20 points. Bare minimum passing grade, 12. When you look at his grade book, he has 2 numbers, 20s for the things he cares about, and 12s for the things he doesn't care about. And if he was allowed to graduate with a 0, he would totally have a bunch of zeros. And he doesn't just say, I don't like them or I don't care. He says, I'm bad at it. He's bad at whatever. Like, seriously? He's one of the smartest people I know on the planet. But he claims he's bad at blinkety-blank subject, right? And again, it extends to personal life. And I didn't get it because I was like, I'm a woman, I can do everything. And I can do it well, right? And I can walk and chew gum, and I can multitask, and whatever. And then I went to a talk at Stanford with a professor, sadly, whose name I don't remember. And she told a story, because she started in consulting at some point, and she had a male consultant, a male colleague, who said, I am not good at spreadsheets. Well, guess what? That's what you do. As an associate in a consulting firm, all you do is spreadsheets. So you would think somebody declaring that they're not good at the core competence of the job would get fired summarily, right? Not only did he not get fired, because he couldn't do spreadsheets, apparently, he was given PowerPoints and communication with clients, and he made partner faster than anybody else on record, right? So if you're bad at something, use it. If you're not bad at anything, because you're so awesome, make something up that you're bad at so that you're not, people don't make you do it, because certainly they don't want it to be done badly, right? So there. Next lesson, add joy to your life. So whatever joy means to you, this is back to the what gives you joy, right? Do that. Do more of that. And in my case, professionally, what gives me joy is doing things like this, right? Giving this keynote speech gives me a ton of joy. The mentoring gives me joy. Celebrating victories, for the team, small and large, gives me joy. But personally, these are my main sources of joy. Nothing. Okay, so the 3 men in my life, the guy in the middle is my husband. We've now been married for 28 years, same guy, French guy whom I met in Germany, that one. On both sides of him are the teenage kids who remind me about my age to keep me, humble. In the middle is a picture that represents my love of travel, which was mentioned in the intro. So I grew up in Russia. I was not able to travel, and now I'm able to travel. It's like a genie out of the bottle, right? Good luck getting the genie back in. I very seriously collect books with titles like 1,000 Places to Visit Before You Die, and I systematically check them off. And in the last 12 months, I dragged my poor and suspecting husband and kids to 21 countries. So there. And then last but not least is Zumba. And no, I do not always look this goofy when I teach Zumba, but this is literally what I look like for Halloween. I taught 3 classes looking like this, poodle skirt and all, 1950s. Right? So, again, I am not suggesting you do Zumba, although really good idea, just saying. But do whatever gives you joy and insert microdose of joy in your life, even if it's a little bit, right? Every day, because very literally life is too short otherwise. And the last lesson is never stop learning. You heard this a million times today and in general. I learn in two ways. One is by doing, and one is by reading. So the doing is all the examples that I gave, trying things that I have no business doing and not at all qualified for, and just learning, from that. And reading, I learned, to read when I was like 3. I read about 100 books each year. I read every single day. I don't recall the last time that I've skipped a day and not read. But again, however you learn, whatever is the modality that works best for you, just keep on learning. And that's what you're doing here. You're investing in your career, in your learning. I hope you're getting something out of it. So here's the recap. Know what you want. Say yes to new possibilities. Know when to say no. Lean into your superpowers. Cultivate some areas of incompetence. Add joy to your life. And never stop learning. Thank you.